Well, in a good way. So I'm a completely different kind of scientist. I'm a physician, and a physician is someone who applies science to the diagnosis and the treatment of disease. So we're very hands-on. The medical arts are ancient. As long as there have been people, there have been other people helping them navigate and get through the things that attack all of us, injuries and illnesses. And as long as there have been healers and midwives and physicians, medical science has always been at the service of life, saving life, prolonging life, and enhancing life. One of the loveliest, most mysterious, and dangerous parts of human experience is pregnancy and childbirth. So every human being, as Dr. Prentice said, comes to the world in the exact same way. We come through our mothers, who accept us and nurture us and keep us safe, and then deliver us to the world with the small help of our fathers at the very beginning. So, for century after century, this process was mysterious. It was shrouded in complete silence, the silence of the womb, and people understood that in some inexplicable way, the act of love was also an act of creation, and that it produced a human being, which was the highest blessing that anyone could imagine, the child. So in Western civilization, as the practice of medicine developed, an ethical system developed with it, and that's something we call the Hippocratic medicine. And what it did was that it embedded these lofty ideals into the practice of Western medicine. And this was the first to do no harm, also patient confidentiality, healing every sick person, no matter their sex or their class, and very especially for us. Oh, I'm sorry, click again. There was also a prohibition against the practice of abortion. So, if you don't mind me reading, Hippocrates said, "I will use treatment to help the sick according to my ability and judgment, but never with a view to injury and wrongdoing. Neither will I administer a poison to anybody when asked to do so, nor will I suggest such a course. Similarly, I will not give to a woman a pessary to cause abortion, but I will keep pure and holy both my life and my art." That's my favorite line, pure and holy. I like to think of my profession as something that can be kept pure and holy. So as medical science advanced, unheard of things became possible. For instance, childbirth became safer, thank God, and maternal and fetal morbidity and mortality dropped to the point where all of us are surprised if we hear that a baby wasn't born safely. This is an image from a C-section, and this baby is being born alive, of course, healthy, emerging from his mom. But the unethical and immoral practice of abortion was also advancing, and it became safer for the life of the mother, obviously not the life of the child, and not for the hearts and souls of the mothers and fathers. So we all know that in 1973, abortion was legalized across the country, and it was sold to us as a scientific advance, maybe the ultimate scientific advance, that it would liberate us safely and improve our lives, and that the ancient cultural norms which had abrogated against abortion were something that we could shuffle off. They were just social conventions. For us to believe what the pro-abortion movement tells us about early human life and the flourishing of women and the decency of our culture requires blindness, deafness, and silencing of the truth. But modern science has changed everything. It has opened our eyes, it's opened our ears, and it's allowed us to speak with the truth with perfect confidence. So how does science open our eyes? So we were told, and are still being told at this late date, that these aren't young human beings being scraped away from their moms, but balls of cells, products of conception, which is the term that they like to use these days. And this, of course, is a terrible perversion of medicine. And it turns medicine into murder and doctors into contract killers. But modern science has revealed the truth of what is growing in the uterus. So what's growing in the uterus? There's a hint on the baby. The answer is baby. So a baby is growing in the uterus, and we know it because we see it. So fetal ultrasound was, I believe, the game changer. As Roe v. Wade was being passed here in DC, ultrasound was being finally used for the diagnosing of prenatal issues. This is what they looked like in 1973, and this is what they look like now. You see that we have come a very long way. So here we have a fetal hand. You can see the radius and the forearm, the little metacarpals. Over there up top, that's a tibia. Down here we have a fat little thigh. And over there we have some toes that are just waiting to be tickled. Very soon, very soon. And then we have the perfect profile, the delicate ear, a pretty face, and those nice lips. That's a nose, a lips, and a chin. And then, on real time, oh, it's a video, yes. Can you tell what that baby's doing? He's sucking his thumb. Or her thumb. That's one of my favorites. We don't see that very often. That's a very rare thing, to see a baby sucking her thumb. Anyway, it was early in the 90s that the next advance, which was transvaginal ultrasound, came to us, and it opened a window into the very early development of the baby. So this is a transvaginal ultrasound of a very young embryo, maybe 6 weeks or 6 weeks past, or whatever, 6 or 7 weeks, depending on how you count. He's about the size of a blueberry, and he already has something very important that we can detect. So that's the fetal heartbeat. We can hear that very, very early. We call that 5 weeks. Dr. Prentice would call it 3 weeks. He counts post-conception. We count from the last period. It's the same time. So this is a very exciting moment in the ultrasound suite. At this moment, there's a reality that falls upon the mom and dad that is so beautiful to watch. It doesn't matter how many times I see mom and dad hear that swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. It never gets tiring because it's that moment when they know that their little baby's alive and that there's a very good chance they'll be holding him in 9 months. So it turns out that science opens our ears to life, not just our eyes. And science speaks the truth. Science speaks the truth because it illuminates the truth. So Dr. Prentice explained, and he talked about some of these stages in fetal development. Very importantly, as he mentioned, is in week 13, most of the baby's body is sensitive to touch. And this is a scientific fact. And at week 21, or as we saw with Micah, at week 20 is that's a very, very, very young baby to survive outside the womb, but we know that it happens, we have proof. And then the ugliness is that Roe v. Wade allows for late-term abortion, completely legal, of these children that we know feel pain, that are being traumatized horribly and killed, I should add. So here in the United States, we're outliers as far as it goes for late-term abortion. And it's something that, to me, is especially revolting. Of course, I just saw the Gosnell movie 2 days ago, and I still haven't been able to sleep. But I recommend it to everyone, regardless. I think it's good to acknowledge the courage of pro-life filmmakers who are able to do things like that and know that they're fighting against the current all the way. So, is it possible, we ask ourselves, for any man or woman who has a heart of flesh to see pictures like these and not feel a great tenderness and protectiveness for the little ones? How hard can the hearts of the pro-abortion lobby be if they're able to support carrying them limb from limb? So here's another fabulous way so this is another fabulous way that science is going to be that pro-life force within the pro-life movement. This is MRI. So I do mostly fetal ultrasound, and I do a lot of MRI. So I love this. I don't get to see any fetal MRIs because the science isn't quite there yet. So these are sort of experimental. But MRI is an amazing thing. It allows us to really appreciate the intricacy, delicacy, and especially, that's a little graphic. That's a birth. So, but especially the humanity of the developing child, and knowing that we're inspired and we're strengthened to fight back against the culture of death that simply lies to us. So I've concentrated on the science of imaging because that is what I do as a radiologist, but of course other kinds of medical science are also at the back and the heart of the pro-life movement. And I'll stop.
Thank you.
Thank you.